Yeah, first of all, maybe I like to introduce myself. I'm Andreas Heitmann from Germany, Hamburg, member of the Alligator Company. It's a small consulting company, yeah, specialized in modern data platforms, data vault, automation, analytics, in yeah, mostly cloud database management systems like Exasol, Snowflake, and yeah, we are also making experience with DuckDB, for example. And yeah, but mostly our job is yeah, consulting, helping companies um, building up their data vault solution and help them to understand their business. Yeah, okay. So next, the first main intention is in a lot of project, I got the idea that it's very essential and the most essential part is that you understand the business of your customer and that you making a business model together with him as a foundation for data warehouse solutions. And so I think it's essential that you concentrate on the business part, and there are already a lot of good ways for the physical implementation of a data warehouse, like Data Vault, and this concept already have a lot of good implementation patterns on strategies. So from my point of view, it's very interesting to highly automate the process of creating the data warehouse. So you can concentrate on the main part and understand the business and talk to the business. And yeah, so in fact, as I said, there are already a lot of interesting and reliable patterns. You can use them, and yeah, I will go into deep a little bit later. But maybe first of all, short introduction why I use these tools. First of all, I choose the tool Ellie to visualize the data, the business model that you working out together with the customer, because Ellie can easily be implemented to show and adapted the Elm approach, which I show later. And Ellie has an easy connection. You can get this model out with API or in a JSON file and then to use it for the automation. On the other hand, of course, I choose Data Vault as the implementation pattern or concept because it's a perfect way. You can work agile with it. You can adapt things to it, and you can focus on the business and then expand this focus more and more. So I think Data Vault is a good solution for it. And if we are coming then to the automation, I choose AutomateDV, and here you can see Haley, the mascot of AutomateDV, because they are providing a good um, code snippets and templates to create and define the hubs, links, satellites, which you use then as a physical implementation. So you can perfectly automated create these Ginger templates then later. And underneath there is a DBT which orchestrate everything and fill the physical data vault and also provide good solutions for lineage and also for the semantic layer. Yeah, at the end, I chose Willibald, the artificial Willibald company as my example. I will also later show a little bit more about this company. So yeah, now we can go more into deep. Why is automation such a good way? So in fact, you can concentrate to illustrate the business interview and present it to the business with, for example, the Elm approach. I chose this because it's also a good approach for to adapt to set a focus and then to make it brighter step by step. And so it's a good way then to talk to the business. Therefore, I use the enterprise logical model, short ELM. And yeah, in fact, you can focus to align with the business and build up this model, and then you can concentrate on this, and you don't need to take care, in fact, of the physical implementation into deep because they are already approved patterns to implement the data vault. And in fact, it's also independence from the developers. As you may know, if you have different developers have in fact different approaches to implement something different physically with small differences. But if you're using then really automated approach, then everything looks like the same. You have the same writing concept, the same writing patterns to write the data into the data vault. And what is, from my perspective, also very important are the reading patterns. If you create a business um, um, a vault, then you also have to, in fact, capsulate the hubs link satellite and present the business and the consuming people uh, the same model and the same objects they define in the model. Independence, if you have 4 or 3 satellites for a customer, or how you join this in the background. Um, so I decide to have a reading layer about it, and this is also highly automated. So you can consume this data in the same way. You don't have to take care how to get the time slices out of the satellites, and there is a pattern where you can do that in the same way. So I think also the reading patterns are very important if it comes then to an automation approach. Okay. Now, I like to introduce the 3 different levels of abstraction and concerns. In fact, we have 3 different levels. We are starting with a align and conceptual level where you talk to the business, understand their business, describe their business objects, and just listen to them and write down or post what they tell you. And then in the next step, if you find the right business objects, then you're going in the next level on the refine and logical level. Here you can use Ellie, and here you're going into deep. You describe the business objects together with your business. You define the business keys with the business. You define the relationships between the different business objects. And as on top for the automation, you also define the kind of mapping where you really find out where do I get my data. Both of these levels are only on the logical level. It's independent from the physical implementation, independent from the maybe performance that you will have later in the physical way. You just design the needed business object that you defined together with the business. And it's very important to that you talk to the business as soon as possible, that you involve them as soon as possible. And then the last step is design or implementation and physical layer, where you really decide, okay, that you use your data vault concept or anchor modeling, or as you choose, which is the best for your customer or the best for the business to implement. And here you can highly automate the artifacts that you get from your model that you defined here, and you can highly automate this physical implementation. Oops, sorry. And yeah, but it's a cycle. If you designed or physical implemented something and then you found out the data isn't as expected or some objects may be missing, then you will make the alignment part again and then refine again. So in fact, then it's a circle. Okay, so let's go a little bit more concrete. How do you talk to the business and which conclusion you can get out from the business? As an example, here I have four different people from the business which telling you something about their business. The first three guys telling you something about their customers. One tell you that the customer only counts if you buy something at the shop. The others tell you about advertising, and maybe the third guy just like to know how many customers we have. But in fact, if you look at the answer, you will see that in fact they are talking about all of the same customer which exists in the data of the company. So it's only different business view which they have here. So here, for example, then you can design this as the customer as a major core concept, for example. And if you then define the business needs, then you can use this confirmed customer, let's say, to present them their own key figures that they, yeah, see from their point of view, for example. And here, for example, you see this guy telling you something about suppliers. Maybe in the first step, in the line step, you can also collect some business object called supplier. But then if you have the overview, then you will see where's the pain point or the most pain point of the business. And maybe they tell you, okay, we need key figures about our sales and our customers. So you decide, okay, this is not in the first scope, this is in the second scope. And then you can concentrate on the scope and fix the scope of your model then. And here, for example, you see this customer also tells you, okay, our customer looks like the customer in table X, Y, and Z in the CRM system. It's in fact a good information for mapping purpose, but it's too technical, um, if you say so, because you have to concentrate how the business really use their objects and not how they are presented in the source system. And this will lead me to the next slide. Um, I think it's very important that you take care that you don't implement a one-to-one source system data vault because different reasons, which I like to explain now. For example, here you have a source test system which is already maybe in 3NF if you have luck. But as you see, if you really look at it, then you see a lot of things that hinder you to really have a good understanding of the business. In most cases, for example, the data in the source system it's not well defined and not described, or they are using wrong naming. No, the source system talking about persons, and if you then show in reports a person, then the business can't handle it because they are always talking about customer or supplier or something else. So in fact, you have talk to the business in their own wording and not in the wording of some source system you have. And in fact, the other point is, for example, the wrong business representation. You have different the data is implemented in different ways where the business maybe can't handle it or can't use it in that way, which is it implemented. Typically, maybe the um, source data is not quite normalized and harmonized, in fact. And in many cases, you have the wrong scope. For example, with a supplier, of course, you have the supplier here, but it's not in a focus. And just think at the maybe as an SAP system, you will get hundreds of tables with hundreds of attributes, and it doesn't make sense. In fact, to just make a one-to-one data vault out of it. So, in fact, therefore, a good business model is very important so that you then concentrate here on the core business concept and focus on the business needs that they have for the first step, for example, that you can easily make a fast breakthrough, in fact, and to show them that their concept work in that way that they need. Okay, maybe now I like to introduce short the Willibald company. The Willibald Company is an artificial company. It's founded from the German-speaking Data Vault user group, and it's a fictive plant and seed company. Uh, and they deliver data for their business, and they also defined I don't know 13 or 14 use cases or special cases with duplicate data, with multi-active data, with missing data, with deleted data. And this challenges, I representing, in fact, the business of many customers in a good way. And the idea of this project is not that you say these tools which try this or implement this data vault in their with their tool. It's not the purpose that you say this is a good tool, this is the best tool. It's just that you can compare the outcome of their solutions and then adapt it or decide for your own business if it's a good approach or which approach of which tool is in fact the best. And yeah, so therefore I chose the Willibald project with the data, maybe a short introduction, short explanation of it. They are selling plants and seed in two ways, on a catalog and online, deliver it to a customer. And the second business is that they making a roadshow, that they're driving with a big truck to yeah, Vereinspartner. It's sorry, it's I try to put it in an English word, but I think it's a typical word for people which are organized as with a garden in a big area where maybe 20 people have their own garden in Hamburg, for example, and then they have regulations as typical in German. And yeah, we call it then a Verein. It's some kind of club partner, in fact, if you say so. But I keep it here in German because it's easy to not so easy to translate in English. And yeah, this roadshow then going to the club, maybe in Hamburg, and then selling their plants and seed there. This is a yeah draft concept of Willibald. Okay, now I like to introduce, make a short introduction of the Elm approach. Um, you can, if you're really interesting, then you can go into deep. It's an idea from the Genesee Academy from Hans Höttgen, for example, which I think it's invited together with a data vault in one way. It's a concept how you can interview the business and talk to the business, align with the business, and then collect the CBCs, the core business concepts, and the natural business relationship between these CBCs. They are called NBR, natural business relationships. And then I will go into deep a little bit later. But the CBCs can be clustered in, yeah, in fact, five different cluster. You have persons, places, events, think, and yeah, unknown. In fact, if you can't decide, then there's also an unknown cluster. Oh, just a moment. Sorry. Yeah, I'm back. My Windows switch off. Yeah, that's the two elements. There's also a third element called ensemble. In fact, an ensemble is a combination of different CBCs and MBRs, their relationships in the context of one business flow. I will show later an example of it, so then I think it's easier to understand. Okay, here the one part of the Elm approach is the CBC list. You're just making meeting with business people, and yeah, maybe it's a good way just using post-its, just collect and hear what they say, and then write it down on post-its, maybe in an electronic form. But I think normally I prefer the physical post-its, and then you can just listen to the business people. No, for example, one guy tell you a customer order a product, adds a catalog which is delivered by a delivery service. And just in this one sentence, if you listen to the nouns and verbs, you can identify five CBCs, core business concepts. And then you can make some Excel sheet or some matrix here, writing down all the CBCs that the customer tell you, and then you can try to cluster them. Um, sorry. In the most cases, you will identify, yeah, maybe a handful, four or five events. Um, For example, here you have a catalog order, you have a roadshow order, and you have a delivery. And if you have more events, then you really should take a look at your focus. If the focus is it's not too bright, um, then maybe you can decide. Okay, if you have something with a delivery of products, for example, as an event, then you can say, okay, that's not the part of the first scope we collected here, but we concentrate on the major CBCs which business really need in the first step to make a fast breakthrough. And then you can try to cluster the other things. You don't have to take care so much with this cluster. Is, for example, a Vereinspartner, is it a person or is it a place? You will see I categorize it here as a person. But I think later I recognized in the view of the business, it's more important that is a kind of place because the truck driving to it, and so it's more like a city in that way. So, uh, but the interesting thing is if you cluster it, then you will see if you don't have, for example, for your events, you don't have any connected places or things or person, then you should think again about it. Is there really no person involved or no place or no thing involved? Okay, there may be some events where it's not, but most of the cases you have one of them, at least one of them. So, and then you can see if something missing maybe. And you can also see in this approach, maybe if you have too much persons involved, then you can see, oh, for example, is my customer or is the something called advertising person, is it maybe the same? Is it really maybe the same CBC? And then you can see if you have an overview here and cluster it in that way. Okay, that's the first step. And then the second step is the CBC form, where you're coming into the refine level, where you can use Ellie as support. This is a step where you go into deep and define your CBCs. You define the business keys of your CBCs, of your business object. You define the context of your business object, like name, address, and so on. You describe it very well in the point, in the perspective of your business. You can build up a dictionary, for example, then on this place. And I think it's even a good idea that if you make a dictionary in that way, that you just write down what the business tell you, maybe even um, mark it with a department. Maybe you can say from department view, the customer is this and this, and from the view of the advertising department, customer is this and this, and I think it's a good idea to collect this information in a dictionary, and then you can make convert this then in business rules, or you can see this is the same, and then I can make some kind of confirmed object out of it. Yeah, and Then in the next slide, you can see how you can put it into the Ellie tool, for example. Here you see um, a definition of the CBC product. You see, I customize it as a thing, and then you can put the context in it. You can describe every field, every context. You can define which is your business key. Um, at this point, the Ellie tool uses the buzzword PK in the background for some uh, things. So I decide to keep this buzzword PK, even if maybe PK say that it's more physical, but in this point, you're not physical, you're still on the conceptual level. And in fact, this should be named BK as a business key, in fact. But I keep this notation in the sake of Ellie, in fact. And here you can define which is a add-on, for example, for the later automation, that you also define where your context came from. It comes from the source system web shop table product, and the field there is called product ID. Yeah, please. Um, I this is an old snapshot of my model. In the newest version, I already use some more speaking names here as a context. For example, I call it a product type or everything in English. Um, yeah, because these are the nouns that you align with the business, of course. But I only have this old screenshot, so please imagine that this context names are even more descriptive and even more match the what the business tell you and how the business talk about these contexts. Okay, and at the end, here you see the whole Elm model from Ellie with the Willibald project. Here you see the three events. You have here a catalog order, you have the roadshow order, you have the delivery as the events, and then you have the product and the types and category of the products. You have the customer, Vereinspartner, and his address. That's the first focus and the major focus that you have. And these are the basic and the foundation then for the later automation. In fact, then you can use an API call or export this Ellie model to a JSON, and then our Alligator Python script come into place. In fact, here you can see an overview about the whole automation process. Here you have the align and refine level with the Ellie model and the M model. And then we have our first Python script which pass this model, and then put everything, every name, every mapping, every description, everything you got out from the model into an CBC NBR Python class. Oops, sorry. I choose this interlaying step because I like to still like to be independent from the physical implementation at this point, and just use an standard of standard I defined for my Python class, NBR and CBC, to use it. And you can use this Python class also maybe to create put it into Vaultspeed or in other tools which automate it or create your physical model out of it. So I choose this additional step, for example. And then I have a second Python script which then creates AutomateDV Ginger templates for the HubSlink satellites out of it, creates DBT SQL statements for the layer for the presentation layer, define the semantic model out of it, and the tests, for example. And here you are really on the physical model where you create then your data vault. And then you can run a DBT, and DBT also creates script and then create your physical data vault model out of it. And DBT will schedule it for you, will fill and load every hub link satellite for you, and create a semantic layer. I choose even the alignment color here because I think especially for the dimensional presentation layer and the semantic layer, you're still on the align and refine level here. It's not so much physical. You just define the key figures, for example. Therefore, I think it's a mixture from the logical part and here, of course, the data vault model and the tables and HubSlink satellite, of course, are physical and at the design level. Here is a more into deep diagram how the different parts are used. Here you see my CBC NBR construct with the here the NBR, there's a CBC source name and a CBC target name, which going into the name for the link. The CBC name will be used in the hub name and the satellite name. The context fields go into the satellite. The defined business key will be used in the hub as a business key. And then automatically the constraints, the major constraints for the HubSlink satellite will be created automatically, and also this access layer, which I explained. I think it's also very important that you encapsulate this data vault for the consuming part. So you just have an automatic way to join everything together from your data vault independently. If you have 3 or 4 satellites for a customer, for example, you join everything together and then represent the business or the consumer the same CBC object as he defined in his model. He will see his customer as he defined it, independent of the physical implementation, in fact. And the last layer is then DBT semantic layer and dimensional model, because many reporting tools still need for example, a Snowflake or a star schema at the end. Yes, and for example, all events that you defined in your CBC will then end in effect. Okay, I have to hurry up a little bit. Here are the major outcome if you are running the Alligator Python script and the DBT, and every Elm pattern that you defined then created a pre-stage and the stage object. They are created and loaded. You create and load the hub link satellite automatically. You create the CBC ensemble views and the dimension layer. Um, all objects in your Elm model and the descriptions are visible in the DBT project and also at the physical level. No, it's very helpful. For example, if you have a dimensional model in your reporting tool and then you're just going with a mouse over it and then you see the description of your customer which you defined in the Elm model. As I said, all constraint and not null tests are run. You can decide if you then make an error or just as a warning if you have errors. The semantic layer is defined, and you have an attribute and lineage on an attribute level, which I'm showing you here. This is a DBT feature, especially in the cloud. For example, if you are going back, your business asks you, "Hey, I have an attribute in my source." Sorry, it's still in German. With the amount, and then you can see here this field are going into the two staging layers which you have as a pass-through. Here you have a transformation into a hash key for the satellite, which is used later, and the original field of the amount make pass-through to the satellite. This is the business layer which you have, where you also have just a pass-through of this field. And this is your dimensional layer, where you have here the original field, and here, for example, you have transformation where you aggregate this field. And yeah, so you can just answer this question. Here you have a short example how you can use the semantic layer of DBT in an easy way. There's a plugin for Excel and Google Sheet where you just have to plug in the semantic layer. You connect it to your DBT cloud. Then just choose your metrics which you defined and how you like to group it. And then you can just get here an overview about the order total net of all Vereinspartner. And then that is an easy way, for example, that your business people can take a look and say, oh, no, that's not what I'm expected. And then you can make a cycle back maybe from the implementation part again back to the align and the refine part, and maybe then adjust the key figures that you defined. Okay, here we are nearly coming to the end. Here are some challenges and advantages of this solution. First of all, at the moment, the Ellie tool don't provide a way that you can define multiple sources for one CBC object. At the moment, it's not you're not able to say, okay, my customer coming from source system A to from A and B because the name of the CBC fields of the context is unique. So you can't say make a mapping to source A and B, but I think it's can be implemented in not such complicated way. Um, the other thing is at the moment I just defined that one hub has only one satellite. I think it can be helpful that you maybe use and separate any field in this sheet I showed you, where you can say, okay, this context field, customer name, for example, have to be implemented in a satellite for a line for no, sorry, for security reasons. Maybe have just to hash key the complete satellite information for security reasons, for example. And I think that's an easy easy to implement, that you also can define different satellites in Ellie and just adjust the Alligator Python script that it's not only create one satellite, that it can create multiple satellites, for example. And the other challenge, of course, is that you have to get the improvement of your stakeholders to make such meetings, and of course you have to find the user that like to participate in this meetings. And oops, sorry. Yeah, and the advantages, of course, you as analytic guy can focus really on the align with the business and let the automation work for you. You don't need to take care about physical implementation, how you implement it. Everything is implemented as the same way. For the business, they're having a well-defined data dictionary and described business terms. And in fact, for the organization, you have a really efficiency way to make decisions, and your business model is transparent and clear. You find your information, in fact. No, I think it's even more important. For example, if you are looking for AI and so on, it sounds good at the first moment, but if you don't define your business data, or just give them your source system information from the source system, uh, I'm sure even a good AI approach can't give you that results if your data is not well defined and well harmonized, for example. Therefore, I think this step of understanding the business is even more important. Yeah, so I'm coming to the end. Here you can see again a short overview about the steps. You have here the Elm business model approach with Ellie defining the Elm model. Then you can automate a data vault with the help of Haley, AutomateDV, also automate the dimensional model, and at the end you have your defined key figures and reports. Yeah, feel free to contact me if you like to have a deeper dive into the solution. I didn't make it so technically. I think hopefully it's okay for you.